Hello Animorphs fans and welcome back to AniLysis. Today we're looking at this chap here, Mr. Edelman. Or to be fully correct, George Edelman. And he comes in this book, Book 17, The Underground, and There Only. This was his actor in the TV series, so he's one of the few characters from the book series who weren't one of the main cast to be put to screen. And that's sort of what's become his canon appearance in the book series for me. And there wasn't much in the book series that clarified his appearance. Let's look at the couple of quotes that do lend to what he looks like. He seemed like a normal-looking, middle-aged guy, aside from the fact that he was screaming in terror. Mr. Edelman looked at me with confused but kind, grey eyes. He made an effort to smooth his rumpled hair. That's really as far as descriptions go for George Edelman. He's got rumpled hair, so that could end up being rumpled, so yeah. Grey eyes, this guy looks like he's got grey eyes, and he looks like a relatively normal dude. So yeah, George Edelman. He's even got a grey dressing gown on, just to show how grey of a person he is. And he is actually a very sad and tragic figure in the Animorphs series, both book and TV series. Although I did put a poll up recently. Which fate would you rather have? The book series Edelman fate or the TV series Edelman fate? Because in the TV series, he ends up just being another normal controller. We're not covering the TV series stuff because we're concentrating on books in this AniLysis series. So we're going to look now at the plot of Book 17 where George Edelman is involved, why he's involved, how he's involved, and how that impacts things. Okay, so how do we start? Well, the Animorphs are going to some rock concert in the town. Let me get this straight. There's a new Planet Hollywood opening in town, and you and Rachel have decided that you want to go, but you can't get tickets. So you want to fly there in Morph. So the Animorphs go to this big celebrity concert to see the celebrities, which is weird because if it's in the middle of town, then maybe it's just an American thing, but surely it's a public place and you can go there anyway. Why would you need tickets? I don't know, maybe they section off a part of the city and all these freaking hoity-toity celebrities go along and say, hey, look at me, and then sod off to their next money-making scheme. Maybe that's it, but either way, they fly over there, so they're all in their bird of prey morphs. And Rachel is flying near a building called the Kenny Building, and this happens. I wheeled around in a huge circle that carried me close to the Kenny Building. I saw a man in an otherwise empty office on the next to highest floor, 60 floors up. I don't know why he caught my eye, but he did. I banked to go back toward him. And that's when he picked up the metal-framed chair and threw it into the window. Crash! Glass exploded outward and fell spinning and sparkling to the ground. Big shards sliced through the tops of parked cars. Cassie had spotted the crash of the window too. Oh man, that guy is going to jump! I believe he would be injured if he jumped, Axe observed. So I doubt he would... Ah! The man had backed up and was running straight for the shattered window. There's 6 of us, I yelled. Come on. Not enough, Tobias said, but maybe we could make the river. I raced for the window. The others came flapping up from below, or plunging from above, or wheeling around from the same altitude. The man ran. He stuck his hands out to push away the last shards of glass. Then he launched himself, feet first, into space. So this chap is in the Kenny Building. By the way, there's a lot of references to South Park in Animorphs, and I'm guessing this is probably another reference to South Park for some reason, even though that's a show for adults and this is geared at kids, but you know. I've got up here something called the Splat Calculator. I've just searched up on Google how long does it take to fall 30 floors, and this was the first thing that came up, the Splat Calculator. So 60 floors up is, according to Google, usually around 200 meters. Yeah, so similarly, a residential tower approximately 200 meters high has 60 stories of usable space and is 206.15 meters tall. Falling parameters: height in meters, 200, mass in kilograms. Let's say he's average weight, so 70. Calculate So the time until impact is 6.39 seconds. So that's how long from the point of him jumping out of the window it should take for him to reach the ground. 6.39 seconds. And, well, Rachel is there grabbing onto his collar. Apparently they slow him down a little bit, but not enough for him to survive. So, I don't know, maybe double the time it takes until impact. So let's call it 12 seconds. This stuff all happens in roughly speculated 12 seconds. I was practically face to face with the man as he cleared the building. There was a frozen sort of Roadrunner Wile E. Coyote moment when he seemed to hang suspended in air. Then he plummeted. I opened my talons, stretched them forward, and caught a shred of collar as he dropped. Instantly his speed dragged me down and I sank a second talon in, right around his collarbone. I think I managed to nick him pretty good, but that was the least of this guy's problems. Then Tobias swept in like a guided missile. He grabbed the man's left arm. Jake was next, in his insanely fast Peregrine Falcon morph. He snagged the back of the man's collar. He was slowing, but not nearly enough. "Glide toward the water," Tobias yelled. 6 birds of prey clutched that man. He screamed, but he was falling slower. He was definitely falling slower. Still too fast to survive a concrete landing, but slower. And he was moving forward. Foot by foot, he was moving toward the water's edge. So what happens is, this guy is 60 floors up, and he uses a chair to smash out this window. And very quickly you see glass shards smashing into the cars down below. So yeah, it doesn't take that long at all. I think the book gets that, obviously. And then he goes back, and yeah, I mentioned this in my review, actually, I found it quite funny. He goes back and has a run up, and then stops at the window, dislodges a few more bits of glass, and then just fucking pencil dives out of the building. What was the point of run up, you div? If you're just gonna, oh actually, I want that glass to go out too, yeah, that could go as well. Whatever. This is a crap book, okay, book 17. It's the only book in like the first, apart from maybe the Andalite Chronicles, in the first 20 or so books that's actually a big disappointment. I think the authors were just high off their tits at the time because it's written in such a weird way. Why does a man's just jumped out a window and Axe's first thought is, you know, I'm not sure this guy would survive a 60 floor drop. Fucking divvy. It's either just really bad writing or a really bad attempt at a joke as a man's in the midst of committing suicide. You choose. Anyway, so in like split seconds, so all of the Animorphs, are they all there? I believe they're all there. All 6 of them, within that first 6 seconds, will have grabbed a piece of his clothing, which is remarkable, honestly. And then, rather than him going straight down and hitting the cars and whatever below, they glide him forward to a nearby river and drop him in that. Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable stuff, but remember, high off their tits. You know, these things happen. This is what happens next. He falls into the river. I wheeled around and looked for the man. He was not on the surface of the water. I peered down through the murky, salty river water. The man was 10 feet down, waving his arms madly, thrashing and blowing bubbles and looking terrified. "You have got to be kidding me," I moaned. "He's stuck in the mud on the river bottom. Cassie and Marco, come on. We're supposed to be water birds, right?" Now I was an eerie mix of human and dolphin. I powered back toward the poor suicide guy. Although by now I wasn't feeling sorry for him, so much as really annoyed. I mean, what is it with people killing themselves? How big a moron do you have to be to not figure out that at least if you stay alive you have some hope, as opposed to being dead and having zero? Besides, I was missing the fashion show. He was a weird apparition as he loomed up in front of my dolphin snout. He had sunk up to his thighs in the mud. He'd fought his way partly out, but was still in the goo up to his knees. And now he was limp, motionless. But I knew he sure wasn't going to die if I could help it. The stupid, inconsiderate jerk. I buried my snout in the small of his back, bent him backward till he was practically lying on me, and kicked like mad with my dolphin tail. He came up with a slump sound and a cloud of disturbed mud. I pushed him up to the surface and nosed him to the riverbank. Strong human arms reached for him, and yanked him up onto dry land. Very strong human arms. This is a weird book for Rachel because she starts off this book having a massive lack of empathy. She's bordering on psychopathic at this point, or is it sociopathic? It's one of the two. I thought Marco was supposed to be the sociopathic one. But yeah, Rachel is basically saying, this freaking inconsiderate jerk trying to kill himself when I could be buying clothes. Seriously, Rachel? Okay. You know, I was feeling sorry for him, but now I've been inconvenienced, so fuck this guy. Oh, what a shitty book this is. I don't know, this book is almost like The Weakness before The Weakness came along. This is the proto-weakness, where Rachel is just acting like a complete psychopath when we really haven't seen it before. It's just Rachel turned up to 12 out of the 10 scale. I don't know. It's her just being so lacking empathy is beyond me, really. But anyway, who are these strong arms that lift George Edelman out of this river water? Schwarzenegger, real life hero, gives mouth to drowning man. So yeah, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger who saved this man, because obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger is a really top guy.
Well, my freedom is being kind of disturbed here. No, screw your freedom.
Anyway, yeah, so Arnold Schwarzenegger saves him, and I do wonder because if you read the reissues, Arnold Schwarzenegger was mentioned a lot in those first 8 books, and they always just replaced Arnold Schwarzenegger with a bodybuilder. I wonder what this book would have done. A bodybuilder is the hero. We're not going to name him, just a bodybuilder. What the reissues would have done if they got up to this point. Because obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger was no longer relevant in 2011. And then what happens is we figure out this guy's name. So Cassie is the one that tells Rachel about this guy's name because he was in all the local papers as the drowning man who Arnold Schwarzenegger saved. I wonder what happens to George Edelman now, Cassie asked. Who? She rolled her eyes at me. The guy, the man whose life you saved, Rachel. Oh, is that his name? Yes, it was in all the newspaper articles, she said, exasperated with me. George Edelman, huh? I said. Yeah, Jake said. But everyone keep an eye on TV and newspapers for a while, okay? If someone noticed our activities, we want to know about it. Mostly, we have to hope George Edelman keeps his mouth shut. People will figure he's nuts, Marco pointed out. No one is going to listen to a guy who tried to kill himself. I do appreciate this book sometimes, actually, because I don't consider myself very politically correct. You know, I wouldn't say I'm politically correct, and a lot of you probably agree with me. The Animorphs are more politically incorrect than I would be in this situation. That's too far for me. That guy is so... Anyone who tries to kill himself is nuts and nobody should listen to them. I'm more politically correct than that. So yeah, I do appreciate this book for showing us how truly politically incorrect the Animorphs are. And there's quite a few chapters of this book actually dedicated to them just being politically incorrect. It's great. We'll get onto that in a second. But before we get to the big nut scene, we find out that, funnily enough, George Edelman has hired a lawyer because he's getting sent to the Mental Health Institute, and it turns out it's Rachel's mother who is his lawyer. You know that guy in the papers a few days ago? The one who was rescued by Arnold Schwarzenegger? He was on the TV and CNN. Schwarzenegger? No, the man he rescued. Anyway, guess what? I'm his lawyer. His family says he's incompetent. Not able to look after his own affairs. That's what they allege. Nuts, I translated. Wacko. Allegedly wacko. Don't say wacko, my mother said, looking pained. Mentally imbalanced will do fine. His family want to have him institutionalized permanently. So what are you supposed to do? I asked. Prove he's not wacko? I mean, he is, right? He jumped off a building. Actually, it's a little worse than that, my mum said, gathering Sarah up into her arms. Apparently this poor man claims he has an alien living in his head. He called them Yeerks or Yorks or something. This is when things get a bit more serious for the Animorphs, when this guy starts talking about Yeerks. And so they have to spring into action and do something about this. And they go to where George Edelman, this chap, is now staying. We all gathered near the Rupert J. Kirk State Mental Health Facility. So we get in, we find this George Edelman and try to figure out if he knows something about the Yeerks. Then we leave Marco behind and get out. So that is the Animorphs' plan. They're going to get into this Rupert J. Kirk Mental Health Facility and talk to George Edelman to find out what exactly is going on, because they know that he is now dangerous. He could say things that maybe would jeopardize their secrecy. And then that's when we get the 2 chapters of the Animorphs mocking political correctness. Fucking get in, Animorphs. And actually say things worse than I'd ever freaking say. And then we get to them searching out George Edelman, finding out where exactly he is in this building and what sort of room he's staying in and who he's staying with. Axe and I morphed to Harrier and Osprey. We've been looking in the windows, trying to spot Mr. Edelman. I have him. 2nd floor. Above the kitchen, then maybe 20 feet along the building. He's in a room with 3 other patients. They're wearing hospital gowns and slippers. They're watching TV. Hey, Cassie, Axe, Tobias. Do you see a roach sitting on a window? Axe answered, Yes, I see you. You are in a small room just alongside the room where the human named Edelman is. Thanks. I rejoined the others. So, now what? Now we talk to Mr. Edelman, Jake said. We need to get him to come in here. We'll have some privacy in here. And then what? He talks to a cockroach? No. One of us needs to demorph and talk to him. I'll do the talking, I said. Mr. Edelman is my responsibility. I rescued him. And I'm starting to think I'm sorry I did. You guys stay out of the way. I'd hate to accidentally step on you. So they go into the bathroom, which is adjacent to the building where Edelman and 3 other blokes are staying, where they're being kept. And Rachel is going to demorph and talk to Edelman. And this is a very funny bit because she says, he is my responsibility. Back on page 20, this was a conversation that happened in the mall. Hey, wait a minute. This guy isn't anything to me, I said. It's not like I'm responsible for him. Marco made a back and forth gesture with his hand. I don't know. Isn't it the Chinese who say if you save a man, he becomes your responsibility? Or maybe it's the Japanese. The Greeks? Someone. I saw it in a movie. So, earlier in the book, Rachel is saying, nah, he's not my responsibility, nah. And then 26 pages later, roughly, she says, I'll talk to him. He's my responsibility. So she's obviously had a lot of character development in the space of those 20 or so books. What happened in those 20 or so pages, rather than books, pages? They made a lot of nuts jokes. Apparently that changed Rachel's perspective incredibly. Either that or this is just a really badly written book. It's either that or Rachel suddenly feels like she has responsibility just because the Yeerks got involved. The Yeerks are now involved and they're actually in danger. Which just means that her moral principles are questionable. You know, it's only my responsibility if it might affect me personally. Yeah, again, we're in book 37 territory here. Anyway, it's not George Edelman that steps in first. Actually, one of his roommates comes in when Rachel's halfway through demorphing. And obviously because he's mentally unwell, it's okay. A man shuffled in wearing slippers. He headed for the toilet. He hesitated. Slowly, very slowly, he turned. My human mouth was just appearing. My lips grew from melted roach mouthparts. Hi, could you get George Edelman for me? The man nodded. Sure. He started to go. Then he turned back. Are you real? Nah, just a figment of your imagination. Ah, I'll get George. This book's too offensive for me. It wasn't even written like a joke. You know, I like jokes like that. Yeah, great. Love it. But it wasn't even a joke. It was just like, this is what mentally unwell people are like. It's like, really? So it's a good thing that crazy people are crazy. And this guy's just accepted that response and goes to fetch George Edelman, this chap, there, who comes in and speaks to Rachel. I was human by the time Mr. Edelman poked his head cautiously into the room. Hi, I said cheerfully. I stuck out my hand. I'm helping your lawyer with your court case. He was startled. Who wouldn't be? He swept his eyes around the room as though maybe, just maybe, there was something weird about meeting me in the bathroom. He didn't notice the two cockroaches huddled together under the sink. Mr. Edelman, I said bluntly, before he could ask me any more questions, why did you try to kill yourself? He sat down on the edge of the tub, and he said, I had no choice. It's this thing in my head. I nodded. Okay, yes. What thing in your head? The Yeerk. He made a weak smile, like he was expecting me to laugh and denounce him as a lunatic. What exactly is a Yeerk, sir? He hesitated again. He was tired of telling stories no one believed. Maybe he was on prescription drugs. They do that in psychiatric hospitals. He was probably loaded up on tranquilizers or something. All of a sudden, I felt sorry for him. Mr. Edelman, I promise you I won't laugh, and I won't make you take any pills, and I won't say you're crazy. Can you tell me what you mean when you say Yeerk? He nodded. Yes. Yeerks are parasitic aliens. They enter the brain through the ear canal. They take over every function of your conscious mind. Suddenly he went into a spasm. It racked his body. He jerked wildly, wrapped his arms tight together, and tried to control it. His mouth snapped open and shut like some mad ventriloquist's dummy. I grabbed him by the shoulders, trying to do something to help. But then he started raving. He was speaking in a strange, manic voice. I, what? Fahren, jeft, sit, the pool, gehals, help, crunch. Suddenly he fell silent and almost collapsed. I propped him back up. Are you okay? No, he whispered. It happens sometimes. It's the Yeerk, you see. He's mad. Insane. He's in my head and he won't get out. But he is insane. Insane. He's talking about this Yeerk going insane and he's having these wild spasms intermittently, which he cannot control. But he seems lucid and purely human at other times. And he's truly a defeated man. And that, yeah. The actor in the TV series did put across, I can't freaking speak today, can I? Put that across quite well. So why is this the state of affairs we find ourselves in? Well, Rachel delves deeper to find out just why this is happening to George Edelman. Look, I can't stay much longer, but you have to tell me. How is the Yeerk staying alive without Kandrona rays? You've been here for more than 3 days. I cannot possibly describe the way he looked at me then. Hope, dread, amazement, all three. I grabbed him by the shoulders. I know it's weird, but you have to trust me. How does it happen? Why is the Yeerk insane? How does it survive without Kandrona? Andalite? Mr. Edelman whispered wonderingly. Yes, I lied. Andalite. It's the food, he said, gushing the information. The food. During the famine after you Andalites destroyed the one Kandrona, we found out. They found out that a certain food could help them get by. For a while. But there were problems with it. Jeft, Yeerk, Filoka, Gefrash Fit Visser. I had spent enough time close to controllers of various types, human, Hork-Bajir and Taxon, to guess that some of what he was saying was in the basic Yeerk language, and other words were Hork-Bajir. Yeerks seemed to adopt some of the language of their hosts. The Yeerk who was in Edelman's head must have been a Hork-Bajir controller at one point. When I'm talking about George Edelman, I'm bringing his Yeerk into this AniLysis as well, because basically one and the same for the purposes of the story. So apparently his Yeerk used to be a Hork-Bajir controller, probably off on another planet, came down under maybe Visser 1 or Visser 3, and was then planted into George Edelman, this chap here. For a change of assignment, because we know that the Yeerks do that, like in Visser. Idris is in a Hork-Bajir body, and then her higher-ups say, right, you're going over to that planet now, you're going to be in a Taxon host. So that sort of situation. Where this guy's been reassigned, he's been put into this chap. And then the Kandrona was destroyed in Book 7, The Stranger, and we're still seeing the after effects of that. And George Edelman is a prime example of the worst hit. Or not so much the worst hit. You could say that, because a lot of them probably just starved. But his Yeerk found a particular food supply that kept him living, but also drove him insane. What is that food? We find out. A food that could destroy Yeerks. What is the food, Mr. Edelman? Oatmeal, he said, but only the instant kind. And then only the maple and ginger flavour. He shook his head. Yeerks cannot resist the addiction, once exposed, and they slowly, but surely, drive themselves mad. There are dozens of men and women like me, in places like this, on the streets, or worse. So there are apparently dozens of Edelmans. By the way, yeah, I forgot to put these lights on. They're on now. There are dozens of George Edelmans out there, on the streets or in mental institutions like he is now. So you'd assume that because there's such a large pool in this town, and the Kandrona was destroyed in that town, etc., that a lot of the ones that he says are in mental institutes like he are in the same one that he is. So there's probably quite a few in this building alone that are suffering the same problem as George Edelman. And there's also some on the streets, because of course it's California. You know, homeless people on the streets acting crazy. It's just the way of it. Still going to this day, unfortunately. They need to get that Kandrona. They need to get that Kandrona of it. Fucking hell, it's not Kandrona. It's Kandrona, Adam. Joke's ruined now. Sorry, guys. Okay, to make up for it, I'll finish the joke in an unexpected way. Okay, it's not the homeless people that are crazy. It's the ones in Hollywood. Okay, those are the ones that need the Kandrona. Okay, they are the Edelmans. Okay, right, done. Let's carry on. Anyway, this has gone a bit nuts now. Okay, so let's just tone it back down. Let's stop being wacko over here and get back to the AniLysis at hand. So we know that this guy could potentially be a danger, but then the book needs to solve that problem of how we deal with that. And George Edelman basically gives the Animorphs a ticket out of this particular mess. So it's not like we're in a David situation here because of this. The Yeerks will leave me alone. After all, who is going to believe a madman? I'm sorry. I tried to destroy myself. It all just got to be a bit too much. This alien lunatic in my head. My family wanting to keep me locked up in here. Isn't there some way to get the Yeerk out of your head? No. No. He will live as long as I do. I'd never seen sadder eyes. I hope I never see eyes that sad again. I looked away. I just wish the times when I am myself, when I'm in control, I wish I didn't have to spend them in here. He looked out through the dirty bathroom window with heavy wire mesh. There's quite a few things we learn here. Firstly, the guy apologises to Rachel, which, and I'm thinking about Rachel's character development in my head, what that would do to her character. Because all this time she's saying, oh, this inconsiderate jerk, trying to kill himself in my vicinity, you know, it affects me. And then for him to say sorry, would that sort of validate her opinion that it was an inconvenience to her? Oh, I accept your apology, man who wanted to kill himself. Rachel's character development is something I'm going to keep a close eye on as I go through all this animal stuff going forward, okay? So I think there are bits that I'm missing. And this is the sort of thing that will add to the grand puzzle that I'm trying to piece together. We also find out that the Yeerk doesn't die, doesn't leave. So George Edelman is stuck with this Yeerk basically forever. Okay, forever. So there's no hope for this guy. Which is why I asked that YouTube poll, or talked about that at the start of the video, where I said, whose fate is worse? George Edelman from the TV series, who basically just got reinvested, or this guy who's technically free from the Yeerk Empire, but is stuck with this insane Yeerk in his head forever? People actually thought they preferred the book series fate to the other one. I'd probably go the other way, because at least being reinfested, firstly, you don't have a mad Yeerk in your head constantly saying mad things. But also there's hope that in the end you'll be saved. This guy's got no hope, basically, unless there's like some hand-like technology, which we never learn about. But it is a very sad tale, and this guy knows, and he doesn't want to spend his free remaining time inside what is effectively a cage, this mental health institute. When I originally read this book, I got pretty angry at the end where Rachel just decided to bust him out, because I thought, well, where would he go? I obviously didn't take much notice of this bit in that review. Don't get me wrong, there's still parts that are wrong with it, but the guy clearly asked her, or said to her, I don't want to be in here in my moments of freedom. So, okay, Rachel, I'll let you off for a bit there. Obviously, that part, when I did my initial review thing, obviously didn't sink in to my long-term knowledge. So what happens then at the end of book 17, when all the deeds are done? We revisit the Edelman issue for one last time. We headed for home, too exhausted even to make dumb jokes or laugh or be happy we had survived. But as tired as I was, there was one thing I wanted to do. Maybe I have a soft spot for lunatics. After all, if I ever told anyone what my life was like, I'd be in a rubber room so fast I'd get whiplash. When I was done, I flew home and demorphed in my room. I went downstairs as calmly as if I'd never left. Where exactly have you been all day, young lady? My mother demanded. But just then the phone rang. My mum took the call. She listened and kept saying, "What?" She said "what" about 9 times, each time louder than the time before. Then she sat down and stared at Sarah and Jordan and me. "What is it?" I asked. "It's my client. Poor Mr. Edelman." She shook her head like she was trying to clear something away. "He escaped from the institution." "The nut house?" Jordan asked. "He's gone. Ran away. But what's bizarre is how it happened. They're claiming a grizzly bear calmly walked in, knocked the doors down and told the man, in some kind of psychic way," she checked the notes she'd written down, "told him to leave, get out, but not to do anything dumb like trying to hurt himself because the bear had had a really lousy day and didn't want to have to save him again." It wasn't much. I couldn't really help Mr. Edelman. No one could. But some of the time, his own human mind was in charge. And during those times, in between the mad ravings of the Yeerk, I wanted him to be free. Yeah, this ending does come with its problems. So basically, this George Edelman bloke can't really be seen much in public. He can't go back home to his family. He obviously can't go back to the mental health institute because they'll just keep him in there. So this guy's just out in the wilderness, spouting off every so often with Yeerk gibberish. Technically free. Technically, sort of. This is the sort of thing they probably would have wanted to do to David, but because David wasn't spouting gibberish every so often, they couldn't. So, yeah, it's very similar to the David thing, but with enough difference that they could get away with giving him a less horrible fate, basically. So this poor George Edelman chap, we never hear from him again, and we can only assume that eventually he was probably caught again. We can only assume that because it's gonna happen at some point where he's going around like spouting off Yeerk gibberish again, someone sees, calls the police, and they come up, gather him up and put him back in the mental health institute. I'm pretty certain that's probably what would happen. Maybe he just went to go live in the mountains. Why didn't they send him off to the Chi? Why does no one get sent off to the Chi anymore? Because David as well. I know we've just done the big David Annie theory, and I ended that one basically saying, why the frick didn't the Chi take him? Because that would have solved all the problems. It might have helped this guy as well. Surely. I mean, the amount of times the Chi have let us down, it's unbelievable. But anyway, this isn't a Chi AniLysis. This is a George Edelman AniLysis. And we've pretty much covered everything up to this point. It is a tragic story of this innocent chap gets infested by the Yeerks. The Yeerk goes mad, and the host is now stuck with him forever. What limited freedom he has now, ever, is, we can only assume, spent alone. So this really is a tragic figure. A really tragic figure. And more tragic so than David, because as much as David may have been just a normal kid at the start, he turned out to be a pretty bad kid. This guy was just George Edelman. He was just some chap doing his own thing. We can only assume he worked in the Kenny building, by the way. We never covered that. We can assume he was a businessman in maybe some financial thing, and he worked in the Kenny building. Maybe not. Maybe he just thought, oh, that's the biggest building in town. Up we go, down we go again, even faster. Maybe that's it. I don't know, but maybe he worked in the Kenny building. Anyway, that has been George Edelman. If there's anything that you feel I've missed or would like to add, please do tell me in the comments below. Yeah, thank you very much for watching. And I've drawn a very interesting and one of my favourite characters for the next AniLysis. It's Garroth. He was drawn next for AniLysis, so expect his AniLysis soon, and it'll probably be quite a big one as well, because I think there's a lot of speculation that we can cover there. So thank you very much for watching. I shall see you next time. Ta-ra!